on the docket today?
James Brown. Mike Swanson. Chris Markle.
Present.
Dr. Michelle Taylor.
Karen Cook Pryor representing Health Department.
Terry Perkins.
Here.
David Harrelson.
Here.
Quentin Clark.
Here.
Alex Hensley. Mr. McCray.
Here.
Anybody representing the city of Millington? City of Germantown? City of Memphis?
Christopher Marshall's here. City manager.
Oh.
But not at large.
We got six.
We have four.
We have a quorum, we can conduct business. First business in hand will be to, read the agenda. Put it in the minutes. Y'all had a chance to review the minutes?
Y'all had a chance to review the minutes.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
And who was it?
Terry Perkins.
Okay.
I second. David
David
McCray.
Gray.
Take that. Take motion to go.
Yeah, all is, you know, just all in favor, or anybody opposed, approved by acclamation.
So first on,
We're gonna try to leave that door open as long as we can. Just anybody feeling cold.
Mr. Tate, is seeking to obtain a well for, organic farming to retain lake level and irrigation at 12,062 Monterey Road. Light, Gas, and Water did state that they could, provide service. However, with the organic farming, I think that was one of the main reasons, and the lake petition for the well, and it's over 10 acres.
So what's your
We're
perspective?
gonna get the TV turned on too, so we can see our parcel here at the map.
What was that first address?
12,062 Monterey Farms.
Is that in the Eads?
Yes.
It should be one in the
Monterey
package
Road.
while she's getting that up. Should be one in the package while she's getting that up.
Is that what your property currently looks like?
No.
No. Yeah, I, Dave totally changed computers or,
It's similar.
it's what?
Similar.
That's this picture that's in here.
It's just the aerial's not current, that's what's going on.
Looks like it's being
So
developed.
that's before the
Yeah.
house was built and the lake was finished. Okay.
Connect to show you the house, Angela.
Just zoom in.
I need to be able to log into my, account that has all my links saved on it, and I don't have that information. What people would you like that?
Well, like in your
Let me,
package.
let me,
I was gonna say,
I'll be
it's
right
one
back.
in the package. I think that'll probably do, at least give
Yeah.
one idea where the sign
Yeah,
is.
you've got the house and everything in your package.
I think that everyone okay with that? I think that we just have an idea where it's at. Okay. Mr. Tate, how are you doing? My name is Mr. Morkel, and thank you for coming in today. We understand it's not easy, the butterflies are probably going, and it's not easy to come and sit in front of all of us, so we thank you for coming today to talk to us about your site. I think you have a pretty good write-up, but maybe you could kind of summarize, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're intending to do, and why you need a well on site. If you could just kind of bring us into the background. You've done a very good job of the presentation here, so if you could just kind of let us know a little bit about that.
Okay, great. Of course, my name is Anthony Tate, and the property location is 12062 Monterey. And let me take this opportunity to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to appeal and hopefully get the deal to my request and allow me to establish a well on the property. My plan is to establish a organic garden on the property. Currently, there's a 1.5 acre lake, and I want to make sure that I have the ability to retain the water level. In addition to that, I want to install a sprinkler system to cover the entire property. And I want to establish a catfish organic pond. And so, you know, in doing some research, I discovered, based on several criteria, that based upon the description of the property, that it's okay, well, based on rule 12.1, it allows for a well to be established on the property if I meet certain conditions. And one is that the property will have a lake, I apologize, for irrigation and to retain the water capacity on the property.
Yes, so I didn't see that on there. Yeah. So you have a lake. What is the size of your lake?
1.5 acres.
1.5, which is greater than the stated 1 acre size, as a means to petition for a, what's the right word? Exception to the rule. Okay, so you have a more than 1 acre lake, and you have about 10 acres. You said you would like to irrigate the entire 10 acres, is that correct?
That's correct. It's actually 10.5 acres.
Okay.
10.5 acres.
And are you intending on irrigating, would that be grass, or would that mostly be crops or things that you're raising, food crops that you're raising?
It would be both. The vegetarian garden that I plan on putting on the property. Also plan on putting pear trees, apple trees, in certain sections, and I'll use it to ensure that it retains the water that it needs to grow.
So part of what we're interested in as well is protecting the aquifer, the water supply. We're very fortunate to have a good water supply, and we want to use it, but we want to use it well. So I have a couple of questions that I just had as I was thinking. I think maybe some of the other folks might be in here for the next ones, and they may have some similar questions. So what size well? What's the pumping rate you're requesting?
I apologize, I didn't bring a copy of that application that I received.
All right, let's go back and look at that, see if we can read it on the application. This is 30, if this is correct, is it 30 to 50? 30 to 50 gallons per minute. Okay. Since you're organic, and I think this is probably not applicable, but I want to go ahead and ask the questions because that's going to be similar to other applicants. Are you planning on using herbicides or pesticides on your property? There's a reason I'm kind of getting to that.
No.
Not, okay. since this, it's my assumption that this is a new well. Is this a brand new well? Is there no previous well or no well on site at this time?
That's correct.
Okay. Since this is a new well, have you thought about any conservation practices that you will use to use the aquifer to the best, most efficient usage of water as possible?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so that hasn't been a consideration yet, and that's kind of where I think as a board, we, in the interest, we're trying, water's important, it's very, we have a very good supply, we're very fortunate to have that. But one of the things is how do we promote, how do we encourage conservation as we grant these, as we consider wells and then grant permission to go ahead and bore them. Okay, so that water conservation is an important feature, I think, for these wells that we'll be getting. Do you know, and this would probably be a calculation, some math behind it, but how much water do you know is needed due to pond evaporation loss on a monthly basis, and what would be your maximum? In other words, I know you think you need 30 to 50 gallons per minute, but how much water do you think that, or have you run those calculations, or have someone done that for you yet?
No. As a matter of fact, to answer your question, I've not done that, but the company that I'm retaining, if I'm granted the rights to establish the well, they came out and looked at the property to determine what's needed. So I guess your question, their calculation is probably factored into the document that was submitted to.
Okay. And I'm not, that's an initial question. We may later ask for that kind of information later to find out what it is, that how much water you actually need on the maximum basis. So we'd probably be looking at something like an August or your hottest weather, what would likely be your water usage there. This is a very scientific question I have next, and I don't personally have the answer, but I know there is detailed information on this. What is in this area in Memphis? What is the plant maximum evaporative loss, and what would be the minimum amount of water required to keep your plants viable? So in other words, the heat shines, water evaporates. How much water do you need to replenish to your soil so that you're getting an even balance and not necessarily overwater? You're using, conservatively, how much water goes to those plants to keep them alive, to keep them growing, without throwing extra water that doesn't necessarily need to be taken out of the aquifer. Very scientific question. Yeah. I'm guessing you probably haven't studied that yet or had someone be able to answer that question, but it is a question to consider as we consider this one. And not to say that you're not the first person that's had this need or this problem. If you've got plants, I've got water them. We just have to figure out the best way to grant or think about these permits that are being applied for and then being appealed, and then how the best way we can use our water supply. So we kind of don't want to end up like, oh gee, where'd all that water go?
Right.
It's here. We want to make sure that we're still using it and having it available as needed.
Right, and obviously that's my intent. The sprinkler system that I plan on getting will be set on a timer, and will be based upon the needs to keep the property looking good. So beyond that, I can't respond to your question. I just don't have the technical.
Okay, that's fine. The consideration is there, and that's why we're asking these questions as you're appealing for this. How can we best use it? And so, what's that process, that methodology? Does the county, when you grant wells, do you have any kind of conservation requirements or any kind of best practices that have to be put into play?
Yes and no, which is not an answer. When we ban continuous discharge, there's those kind of things baked into the actual regs where we frown upon that. with existing ones that were grandfathered in, we're trying to get rid of those and don't allow, flow through, just where it continues to pump and use pump nonstop. It's alluded to in these regs, but it's one of those things, it's evolutionary in those regs. It was probably, the way it's mentioned in there, you can tell they were looking it down the road, coming up with some kind of formula or mechanism to do it, but now it's kind of, like if it sounds really bad, we need to really talk to the people about conservation easement, conservation measures, but on the industrial side. Now, on the resident, I classify all this, these kind of bills as residential, because the volumes are gonna be nowhere near the industrial size. So they definitely don't, the only glance at this kind of subject is just in that exception that they're appealing under, but there's nothing really about conservation said, other than just continuous discharge. We don't want just with a fountain that just continues to run and never stops. That type of thing. But there's no calculation, and there probably should be. Get us to the fine-tuned aspect of where these regs need to go somewhere.
You know, and obviously this is new to me, but I do know that the system that we're gonna acquire will have, it's state-of-the-art, and it's programmable, so it won't be a consistent flow of water being pumped from the well to the property.
Yeah, you can circulate all you want, but you know, which one of which is basically that pumping out, throwing the water, then having discharge, you're basically running out of the pond the whole time, which does happen sometimes, and that's what we don't want. But yeah,
Right.
that's fine. That's all you can ask them to do at this point.
So will for filling the system, how will it know when to, then, as you're saying, it'll be state of the art? And how does it know to turn on and turn off? What will it use for that?
See, again, that question is beyond my knowledge, but from what I understand, there's some tool or device that's in the pond or close to the pond that would monitor the level. And once it reaches capacity, then it would cut off.
And so here's something that, just in terms of controls and measurement devices, I don't know how that, again, I have not installed the system, so I don't know what exactly they look like, but I know a lot of times you end up with controls, they can fail. So they can fail.
Right.
So question would be what kind of, I suppose, monitoring or alarm. Larry has alluded to here, we don't want the water just to run. So if some sensor fails, it could just pump and pump and pump. So would there be then some kind of alarm that you would get out and say, hey, the pumps continue to run for 24 hours.
Right.
There's something wrong with our level sensor. We need to go back and repair it. That may not be something that you've thought about, but it could be something you ask the person and the installer, how do we keep from wasting water? How do we keep from, keep the aquifer full and ready to go when we need it, so that we're not just running water. State of the art can still fail. There's always something that can fail, and that could be an area where it might fail.
And in addition to that, obviously, the system that we're gonna acquire has that technology, but visibility, I mean, we'll be able to ascertain if it's going over the pond level, and we'll have a manual control, I'm assuming where we can just cut it off.
So that may be something that you could have request, can I have a manual shut off, or can I have a way to, manually turn off if there's some failure in the system? The county always makes sure when the well is put in, I believe, that there's protection, right? There's a well protection zone, or do I have the right terminology, some sort of.
Yeah, septic systems have to be so far away, and that kind of stuff, yes.
Just a question I had.
Go ahead,
I
Terry.
don't know that maybe I missed it here on the drawing, but where are you planning on locating the well on the property?
I think she has a diagram that shows.
Did I miss it?
Look on
It's on the last page. Next class.
And I think on that document, it's been approved to set the septic system in a tank.
So it meets the minimum requirements as far as the distance from.
Who did the permit? You?
Yes, it does.
He meets it.
Okay, here's the technician here.
He
Okay.
meets it. And then some.
Ms. Veronica Smith, one of our tech specialists.
Typically on those systems, they'll have a float switch on that pond.
A float switch.
Yeah, when it reaches a certain level, it'll cut the pump off. And then it also has a backup, so in case it does fail and it runs, after the pump has run a certain amount of time, it'll cut itself off. It will cut back on again after it's reset. But you know, and it depends on your model, the model you have, but most of them are all similar. But I'm sure it'll have a float switch on that pond. And when it rises to a certain level, it'll cut the pump off.
I'll make sure it does.
You burn your motor up if you do. At the very least.
And just to clarify for my sake and Terry's sake, where is the well actually located? We see the drawing here, we see some GPS things, and on this picture, maybe the Shelby County, maybe you can help us with that.
Veronica, just show them.
It's gonna be on the, right there at the northeast corner of the lake.
Which drawing, or northeast corner?
She got the picture. Oh, she's pretty close with it, yeah. Just come up.
Right there. And the good thing is, they
Where's
got,
that, right? Where's that, right? Pretty close right here.
yeah, the good thing, they haven't put the power lines in yet.
So it's right there.
Determining where.
Probably come up a little bit further, about like here. Right up in here, but yeah, about like right up in there. Because the power lines has not been put
Placed
in,
yet.
like, I got them, gave them a general area.
Okay.
But from the edge of the house, from the edge of his house to the pond, cause I actually ended up crossing over the barrier he had here, the little stuff.
Silt check?
Yeah, I ended up walking over here, so from the edge of his house here to, as far as I could get to the lake without going over, was 160 something feet, so he got more than enough.
And it is above maximum pool on the lake.
Yes.
How far is that from there over to the septic field?
In the septic
Is
field.
that about would that be about 200 feet?
Yeah, it's over 200.
Oh.
Because his septic field has been, was marked off to,
Right.
all of this was on this side, pretty much, where the septic field is. Which, once again, you had to come across the barrier, the mesh that they had.
Which way did the pond flow out? Does it go north?
No, it goes.
Oh, looks like down at the bottom, in the south,
South?
southwest. Looks like a spillway down there. I think up the bottom, the far end of the pond.
Yes,
Toward Monterey Road?
yes.
Yeah, just,
When, what are you thinking? Questions? motion? Do we have, how do we want to, a motion for this?
Do a motion to approve the permit in second, and then discuss it further if there's any further discussion.
Any further discussion?
Do you have a motion in second first?
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
I'll second
Do we have a motion on the floor to approve this permit? Do we have any amendments or any further discussion on this? I'd like to put it to a vote. Sound like we ought to put it to a vote, so, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Again, we would encourage you, any kind of way you can, have conservation measures. Your system probably will have some, sensors for moisture, that should regulate when it turns on and off. So it's not just running on a, automatically, if it's raining, you don't need to be watering, you don't need to be pulling water out of the aquifer. But it should have some sort of methodology to, be used as judiciously as possible. Other than that, we thank you for your time to come in, and I don't think we have any more, but thank you, and hope all goes well with you.
Thank you so much, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
I think that's always something that, new for us to consider is water is important, and how do we make sure that we're using it most efficiently.
This is a real good discussion because it kind of leads into this working session that we have not got down to have to kind of re-looking at these regs. I'm going to do a little summary sheet for everybody, kind of it's not opposition, but the incongruities of this. In the same paragraph, it starts out with limitation on use of water. Water pump by water well should be limited to reasonable use, but doesn't define what that is. I will get the next appeal. I'll summarize this before we get out of here, and then I'll get something you guys want. There they are. There you go. No pressure here.
The next appeal is Briarcrest Christian School, and Mr. Brian Pope is the contact. They want a well for irrigation, and public water service is available at 76 South Houston Levee Road.
Do you guys want to orient us on the map exactly?
Okay.
Yeah.
Where, and I can show you.
Move your hand down about 6 inches.
I can show you current, there's
Right
three
there?
current wells on this property right now.
Come down about a foot from where your hand was.
It's right here.
There you go, you're right on.
Sorry, point to it again, McKim.
Right there. A little bit out closer to Houston Levee, look, I've lost your mouse. Oh, it's across here now. Okay, down and to our left. Down. Like where it doesn't look like it's school.
Oh, down in
There you go, yes ma'am. Now
Okay,
go
down here, right there?
Yes.
over closer to Houston Levee.
Oh, okay, right there.
Right in that general vicinity, yes.
Okay.
And was the GPM 100 gallons per minute? What's the gallons per minute?
Yes.
Was, did we copied it? Cool.
Okay, well, welcome, and thank you for coming in. Once again, we say this to everybody, but it's always true, public speaking is a difficult thing for all of you, so we appreciate y'all coming in and coming to talk to us about your need. Shelby County is required to deny certain things, and then you guys then have the ability to appeal, so we're here on appeal for the location of a well. Can you tell us a little bit about the background of why you need a well at this particular location? I see you have a number of fields to the north, and you have, at this time, 3 wells, so this would be a 4th well, correct?
Correct.
And if you maybe just give us a little background of history or of things.
You want me to go? The property where the well is located has been Briarcrest property, I need help here, approximately 10 years, give or take, with the plans of expansion from an athletic standpoint, at some point. Well, we have reached that point now. So this area is gonna have another essential, about the size of a football field, which you can compare that to about 6 of those on the map up there. And there's also gonna be a artificial field there as well, going into the artificial realm, which I obviously don't need irrigation for. But the natural field, which, you know, we kinda, I kinda grow them at essentially the highest level. I'm an old golf guy, so we grow pretty good grass there. So if we're looking east, west, north, south, on the east side of that property you see there is kind of where the natural field's gonna be. And for the obvious reasons on needing a well, there is actually a well within, if you were to move your finger up and to the right, up a little more, right some more, right there's a well right there currently, as we speak. And that well basically irrigates everything as you would say is the main campus. So all the commons in the school, the islands, the front gate, kind of what you would call the campus, doesn't irrigate any fields. I can't put another field on that well and be able to water what I need to water for another 12 or 15 zones for another football field. So that's the primary reason. The other, I would say that's the primary reason why I'm requesting another well, because I can't tap into that one and actually be able to efficiently irrigate what I need to irrigate off that well, if that makes sense.
So the overall campus for Briarcrest is over 100 acres. Obviously, having a well for irrigation does help them out. Otherwise, they'd have some trouble getting the water to irrigate all those fields. And fortunately, they're still growing. So this particular piece of property is about 7 acres, and it will be the practice and play fields for their elementary school, which has been up until now practicing on any spot of ground they can find. So that's the reason.
Do you know the size of that existing well?
I think it's a 10 horse.
I know how deep it is.
Because we replaced a motor on a couple of them. I think I'm in that 160, 180 world, somewhere right close to that.
Is it a 4-inch or 6-inch casing, or do you know?
It's 4-inch.
4-inch.
Yes.
So, how often wells you got on the property?
That one.
How often wells you have on the property already?
I know the first one goes back to 2000.
Yeah. And that's somewhat of a loaded question. We've had some work on them, so I've replaced motors and pumps on 2 of them. Just from where, because it was back early 2000s.
Any maintenance issues with them, or just outside of that, that's the main thing?
None whatsoever.
You know what the gallons per minute is on those other 3 wells?
They're all right at 100.
If you do this, if you are allowed to do this well, do you have any plans of any other areas that would need wells?
Like future plans?
Yes.
No, sir. We have nowhere else to go. We're kind of there now. This is it.
Just trying to see what you're.
Yeah, we have, because obviously the church right across the street is there, probably there, but we really have nowhere else to go. So this would be the last one.
both wells, you got already irrigation, do you have, are they on timers, or how do you run, how do you got a system set up?
Run off of, just install irrigation timers. The control, now I am gonna upgrade, I'm hopefully gonna upgrade the panel that will control this, hopefully, new well, with a VFD drive point, so it will not just kick on and kick off, it's more efficient, obviously. And to respond to pressure drops as opposed to turn electric valve on and the pump kicks on. One of my current wells is, well doesn't kick on until the zone is kicked on. One of my other wells, across the street is pressure drops, well kicks on, that's just all the electronics on the well. So I would, this well I'm planning on hopefully, as modern as we can be with efficiency, with electronic components, with all this is, we're not gonna, for lack of a better term, go cheap with it by any stretch of the imagination. Does that make sense? That answer your question?
Yeah, it does, I'm asking this question, as for Chris. So do you have any kind of, if it rains, do you have, or you don't use your systems if you think you get enough, natural rainwater, do you have it where you don't use those systems?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Point in case is I haven't irrigated since the rain weekend before last. So, I mean, we certainly don't. You should never drive by my property and see it raining with irrigation running. That will never happen. And I'm actually, this is need to know or not, but I'm actually looking at upgrading a lot of my time plots to where I can actually remote control them. Because currently at this point, I mean, I live in Collierville, but if it comes like last night, if I would have had irrigation running, we had a storm come through Collierville and actually hit us as well, I would have drove out there and turned them off. I don't, wasting water is not in my forte, or energy to make said water. That's not, I don't have that bone in me. So I'm trying to make it easier where I can just get on my phone and turn it off. But yeah, no, not in conjunction. Yeah, I will only, as the old college educated turf grass guy goes, I water the grass when it tells me it needs it. It's that simple.
So your system is on a timer for, is it, I mean, you're assuming a amount of evaporation or amount of, I just need to turn them on every day? I mean, is it a given that you have to turn your sprinklers on every single day, or how's your system, how's it programmed?
It's programmed however I program it. Basically, I run off of way different than golf course irrigation. I run off electric valves, so it's similar if anybody has irrigation at your house. It's essentially the same thing, just much larger. Areas require more than others. I don't necessarily water every night. I mean, the way this summer, the month of June went, I absolutely watered every night for 45 days, give or take. And each well, including potentially this new one, will operate differently than any other well. And we just don't blanket turn them on and the well runs for 14 hours throughout the night and then have it again the next night. I mean, it's the property, just as anybody's property, one corner is different than the other corner, so it requires less and or more depending on the situation. It's more complicated than just running every night, obviously. There'll be times when one of my 3 wells will run nights in between the other ones not running, just because the other ones don't need to irrigate those areas. So it's kind of hard to explain. I mean, it runs daily. It is just, it's Mother Nature at its finest. It is a living, breathing organism that changes every day, every year, every month. I hope I somewhat answered your question.
What kind of sensors do you have to determine whether or not you need to water? Do you have hygrometers?
Right here.
No hygrometers? Nothing?
I was a golf course manager for 25 years before here, and every tool I ever used to tell me when I needed to water didn't work. Right. Touch field.
Experience?
Touch field experience. I've been growing grass for 30 years. One of the tangent, one of the best ways to tell us whether your grass needs to walk around barefoot. It's one of the exceptional ways to tell whether your grass needs
Feel
water.
like straw, you're in trouble.
If it's poking you, you might need a little bit. And I'm from Middle Tennessee, so pardon all. But literally, I mean, we're dealing with a whole lot of God's creatures right there, and it's gotta be touch feel. A computer can't tell you when it's the same with applying fungicides or herbicides, or, I mean, it's gotta tell you, you gotta be able to touch, feel, smell, and
Just
eat it on occasion, but we're not.
in context, there's 1,750 students at this campus, and they have athletic teams from first grade all the way through 12th. So we're just trying to give them some
Give them more, I mean, that's pretty accurate. That's from a while ago, I think, just about here. But on any given afternoon like this afternoon, anything, of course, that's a wintertime picture because that's ryegrass, but every green spot you see, aside from my stadium field, that one's kind of special, but every one of those is absolutely full until 8 o'clock tonight, every day. And some are waiting to get on it, and hence why we're trying to create more space, because we're just very blessed, but we're growing like crazy, which is a great spot to be in.
You mentioned you were involved with, I think, golf courses before?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And this is, would you say the usage then, what you just stated, is the usage heavier in terms of, I guess, foot traffic per square foot than you would see on a golf course? You mentioned that you have a lot of activity, a lot of sports
Yes.
going on.
Yes, foot traffic, certainly. Traffic in general,
No, just foot traffic, I just
Yeah.
meant foot traffic.
yeah,
particularly.
foot traffic, most certainly.
Do you feel like does that impact how much water it needs to maintain the turf? I mean, more than a golf course, or is it the same?
Of course, yeah, I mean, I don't know about more than a golf course. Does it affect it? Yeah, absolutely. But some of my other practices affect it as well. So it's not only water. There's culture practice, and there's sand, and everything. We could sit here for 3 hours and talk about turf grass management if you'd like. It's being in both. I mean, I was in golf for 20 plus years before here. Grass is grass, but it's the same but different. It's hard to actually answer that question. It's the same, but foot traffic is most certain. Does foot traffic require more water? In certain occasions, absolutely. In certain occasions, if I'm on a golf course, golf cart traffic is way worse than foot traffic on here. So it's a tough question to answer. But generally speaking, on my playing surfaces, which is essentially everything green there, would require more than everything brown there. Does that make sense?
Certainly, yes. You have a very good experience, obviously, and hopefully you're there for another 30 years, but
I hope so.
If it changes, there may not be the same level of expertise, and there may be, I would think that insurance policy, I just turn the sprinklers off and make sure they turn on all night and run and get that field green and lots of water on it. How do we keep that from happening in the future?
The people that I've surrounded myself with. So if I get run over by a truck tonight, the guy that would take over me We have worked together for him to manage the same way I manage. And as large as we are now, and as we have now, see, I've been there since my 7th year, I've been there 6 years, a little over 6 years. We have now, and stop me if I'm wrong, we have now created a standard that is way higher than it was 10 years ago. So if something were to happen to me, or they no longer required my services, they would have to replace me with somebody of the eerily similar skill level. I don't like saying skill because I don't like to toot my own horn, but they would have, if they wanted to keep the standards that we've currently created there, they would have to hire a turf grass manager such as myself, college degree turf grass manager, which is a thing, believe it or not, to keep these standards. If they don't, then they are prepared to lose the quality of standards that we have created there. You know, I won't be there. I can't talk to that, but I would imagine they don't want to go backwards ever again. Correct? So the next person, which as you said, hopefully there's not one, but the next person would have to have the same skill set as I have and prepared to manage at the highest level, which is everything we've discussed up to this point. And no blanket water because it's easy to go in there and turn it on. That's nobody will ever be there that will, and pardon the inference, but of somebody's yard in Alley Plantation and just leaves it on, it waters all year long. You can't walk in it, but it looks great. I can't foresee that ever happening here, to be perfectly honest with you.
From the Shelby County Health Department, is the location there in as far as it's located, not in a floodplain, or it's a acceptable location there?
Correct.
Anybody else have any questions or discussion? I am a little bit concerned in terms of water usage. I mean, you all have to water to make it look good. There's no doubt about it. To keep as much traffic as you're getting, as much foot traffic. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I'm just a little concerned about how does that get, worked out over the long term. I don't know that we have standards for that. I don't know, and there may be standards around the country, different areas. We may not have them here at this point, but I think there could be some room for improvement there in terms of, controls, in terms of looking at, how much evaporation is there. You put the water down, you put down enough to make it green, you make enough to make it, green, and then some more, and then, so where's that point, that break point? You have the experience of, okay, this is where I need it, this is enough water, I know that, but could you do it with an ounce less, a gallon less,
I mean, as the plant grows, plants like to be under stress. They don't like you to water it like you do your yard. And quite frankly, you couldn't play on it. If you watered it that much, you wouldn't have a plant surface, you'd have a mud pit.
So that's a criteria for you then, to have a little bit less water to keep the ground a little bit harder?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Not only harder, but to push the plants. Well, we're getting into turf class now.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
We'll get into it.
If I'm a football field right here, and I water the ever living daylights out of it, all the water's sitting up here, so roots of said plant that I'm trying to grow here are gonna grow where? Right here.
Shallow.
So now all of a sudden it's less drought tolerant than it was before you. So when I say water when it tells me to, I mean, it's got to, and there are certain, if I go out there, because I'm a huge cultural practice guy, so it's not green because it's water, it's green because what I'm doing to it. Some of that's fertility, some of that's oxygen, like I said, we could be here for 3 hours. But I needed to stress because you want roots here, you don't want roots here. You get roots here, and then you can even do with less water, so on and so forth. And anybody that's gonna work under me is gonna learn all that stuff. I mean, I would love for us to start a program there. I know turf grass manager's not a glorious position, but, it's really cool. It's a lot more, it's a lot cooler. Especially, you know, coming from golf when you're doing it at a cut of height of .110. So, it gets really cool then. But I mean, everything we're building there, we're building for proper infiltration, percolation, cation exchange. I mean, we can go through, I mean, we're building it to, water is not the fix for everything. I guess that answers the question. Our water has absolute little as possible. And that's for the plant. I mean, yes, I love keeping our aquifer where it is because we have the best water in the world. But I'm doing it for the plant, I'm not doing it for the aquifer. That's probably not what I need to say. Back me up on that. Yeah, talk me or something, but literally, I'm doing it. I mean,
The trap door's right behind you.
but in all seriousness, I mean, proper management of the plant is proper management for the environment, quite frankly, and that includes water usage.
And energy conservation.
And energy conservation. It takes electricity to obviously power the pump. So, yeah, we could get deep into it if you wanted to. But I didn't get to sit here and talk to her for a long time.
Okay. Do we have any other considerations or any motions that we'd like to, or a motion on this appeal?
Motion to approve.
I'll second
We have any other further discussion on the motion? Put this to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion has passed. Therefore, you guys will be talking with the health department on all the further things you need to do to put that well in as far as protecting it, and well protection. You've got 3 on site, so you're probably familiar with that. Thank you for your time again coming in.
Thank you.
Never easy to come in, and we thank you for everything that you taught us about turf management.
Come out and see us, I'll drive you around.
Thank you.
Hold up.
Yes.
Thank y'all so much. Have a great day.
Mr. Chairman, while they're bringing in the other ones, and the board, you're right on point, because this is kind of this area where I knew where you were going, just thinking, how do we control this growing and just pumping all they want and going down this road? And we've got the general idea stated, water pumped by a water well shall be limited to reasonable use, but we don't have a definition of that. So I think that's one of the things the group, we can work together with when you want to set a conservation plan for somebody, it's not totally arbitrary. We could have done it here, but then that would have been just for them and not part of the tool set that we did. And I'm just thinking out loud, things like maybe, and this was kind of a bit extreme, but 3 wells are having a 4. But we're going to get in these regs where we have things like logging. Actually, would you guys mind at least logging how much you pump every week, or just things like that down there, but we'll talk about that more. Yeah, if I want to say, I don't want to take up more of this time. So
Good afternoon.
How's everybody doing?
Okay, thank you.
Good.
I'll just do this,
So my name is Kieran Roller, and I own the tree firm and actually Green Landscapes. So I've lived in Memphis for 25 years. I'm originally from Ireland. So, and I've worked outdoors and, in our environment that's my business basically. So, I have several people that I employ who are certified backflow testers, and they deal with David Wright at the Cross Connection Board. So I have been a certified tester, but mine is expired. I really don't do that side of it anymore. But I'm a board certified master arborist. Less than 1% of all arborists in the world are board certified masters. Let me see, I'm a contractor in Tennessee and Mississippi, licensed contractor. I'm a licensed tree surgeon in Mississippi. I'm actually licensed in Tennessee. I'm probably the only one on this end of the state. that is licensed to spray in forestry. I do invasive species control for Tate in the Wolf River. So we actually go in after Chinese predators, we go in after other invasive species. So the fines that are actually collected by Tate for construction violations, they pay us to go in and kill weeds with those fines. So I just wanted to make that statement that I'm very conscious of, you know, the ramifications of having a well and the possibility of, you know, cross-contamination. So I do understand that part of it. But, you know, I proposed, the well company actually filled in the application and put the nursery section on there, but I provided my water bills, and this is my primary residence. And I don't know if you gentlemen are the same, or if you ladies pay the bills, but I don't pay our water bill. But when I went looking for it, to make this appeal, you know, this is just our personal consumption at the house. And my water bill is pushing $600 a month, and that's with a second meter. And I actually didn't realize that sewer feed is charged on an irrigation meter. I thought that was actually supposed to be sewer feed free, but I see on here that it is. But, you know, basically, this is my home usage for the well without adding anything else. And this is fruit trees, stuff that's originally on the house when we bought it 3 years ago. So I'm not sure what I need to, you know, what questions I need to answer, but I'm happy to.
Okay, what's the gallons per minute you were gonna pump?
I'm not 100% sure on that question, but I would imagine it would be 250. Somewhere around like you know, 2 to 3 inch line, which I believe is somewhere around a couple of hundred gallons or more a minute.
So, no, you get 75 gallons per minute. Yeah, 75 gallons per minute.
Is what what's
Yeah,
written
it's
on-
75.
yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, 75 gallons per minute. It makes a big difference.
Yes, and that'll probably be a 1 inch line, so that may be 1.5.
Okay.
We kind of, thank you for coming in. We understand it's not easy to come and talk before a whole bunch of people about what you need. You have a well that you're requesting. Is there currently a well on site?
No,
Has there ever been a well on site?
not that I'm aware of.
So this is a new well.
Yeah.
And so I had thought that this might be a business, but you're saying this is actually your actual
This
location.
is my, yeah, right now, the bills that you're seeing are just for my primary residence. So I was shocked too. So,
Are you using so make sure I understand. You got 2 meters, correct?
I do have 2 meters, and actually I provided 2 bills.
So what does each meter feed?
So 1 meter feeds the home, and I believe that was somewhere around $100 or more. But we have, and the lady who visited, you know, we walked the entire property, but we have a lot of fruit trees, and we have, it was kind of a farm to table type home. So, and I think it is zoned farm. On the assessor's website, it actually shows it as a farm. So we have fruit trees, we planted all sorts, I named them in here. You know, pears, plums, apples, different varieties. We have blackberries, we have blueberries. We have lemon trees, you know, Meyer lemon trees, which grow here. We have quince. I mean, literally, it's a farm to table residence, and that's actually the way we acquired it.
The water from the street, though, you need to continue using that for your house, because our rules are pretty clear about that.
Yeah.
So that's, your potable water still must come from, if it's available, which it is.
It must go into the primary residence.
So it's a potable water doing thing, apparently you're still using it and it works for your application, correct?
Say that again, sir.
That it works for what you're using it for right now. Have you had any issues with using the water?
Well, potable water for the home?
Yeah, for the application for the agricultural part, you're doing the farm part.
Well,
Yeah.
we have 2 meters, so, you know, the exterior of the home is covered by the second meter, what I would call or deem the irrigation meter.
So when you water in the farmland, is that good? Does it have any ill effects to your crops or what you're growing?
Just my pocket. But no, there's no ill effects, but it's just impractical. Just cost-wise feasible.
Just want to point out, I did pull up the classification from the Register of Deeds. It is classified as farm.
And I believe the horse farm across the street from us, they have a well. It's a sizable property.
And the water bill last month was $422.83.
And that was the irrigation meter, not with a, you know, with a minimal sewer fee. I do see $50 on here for sewer fee. And then I believe the home bill was over $100 for water in the home.
Now, I'm not sure how, you're in the city of Germantown?
Memphis.
City of Memphis?
Yeah, across the street is Germantown. I call it Germantown View. And I hear water is more expensive in Germantown, so I may not be rushing in.
A lot of industries, and I think if you can have this done, you can have a deduct meter put on your irrigation. And in which case you would be paying not sewer fees for that water.
I think that's what I have, sir. I have, the irrigation meter is probably a deduct meter, because I'm not supposed to pay full sewer fee on the second meter.
So do you report that to downtown and sewer billing?
So do I actually report the usage?
Right.
I don't believe you have to on this, well, that I don't know, but, nobody's requested I report it. Now, we've only owned the home a couple of years, so that I'm not 100% sure. But I mean, would it not be reported by the bill, like the usage?
It says zero, does it say $0 down there?
Can I get Chris McCormick to speak from water engineer at MLGW?
It looks like the sewer fee's on the wrong meter. He's only paying one sewer fee, but it looks like he's paying it on the other meter. If you look at those two bills, there's not a sewer fee on the house line, but there is on the.
Which one is the house line, Chris?
Based on what he said, the one that's got the one that's $400 something for the water is the irrigation, I guess. And then the other one's got the electric meter and everything on it. That should be the house one. So when you look at it, that one that's the house one doesn't have sewer fee on it.
Well, there's a sewer charge of $29.80.
Is it on the next page?
I think
That's on the
There's more.
Literally. So it really looks like when they set up the meters, when they didn't set up one, it's actual irrigation. They just set it up as a separate meter.
He has a separate meter, actual pulling off from the MLGW line.
Mm-hmm.
But there's two sewer charges. There's one for 50 and one for 80.
But
One for 30.
it looks like when you got that set up or changed over, whatever, that separate one's not set up as an irrigation meter, it's just set up as an extra separate water meter. So you should be able to get that changed in the system where it doesn't charge sewer charge.
Right.
Which would be $50, essentially $50 less.
Right.
Right. Woohoo.
You call a number, you call a number that's next.
Well, actually, on a separate note, I see I'm getting charged on both bills for trash cans, and I only have one trash can, but that's another
Yes.
Keep your friends close, your utility bill even closer. That, you know, my wife and I had a long discussion about these bills, so I'm like, you gotta read the bills, you know? But, so.
So how much is your well gonna cost you?
That we haven't, you know, they gave a guesstimate, and I think it was, I think they'd say close to $10,000. There's the new stuff, and I don't know much about well systems, or I'll be honest with you. Sprinkler systems, we do, you know, irrigation systems, but well systems I don't, but I think in the region of $10,000. But in the last 3 months, we've spent, you know, 12 or 1,300 on water. And I think it'll pay me back. So.
On your current system, what kind of controls are you using on the irrigation? How often are you watering, and how do you know that you're getting the right amount of water to those plants versus an extra amount of water?
Well, as I said, sort of, you know, I'm a board certified master arborist. You try not to water every day. I mean, that's not recommended for turf or trees. So, you know, pretty much the drought that we just went through, I mean, these are relatively young trees, so we had to water about every other day. I mean, just visual. I mean, I've done it for 35 years. I mean, I know when a tree is overwatered because it wilts. You get all sorts of root rots, armillaria, Ganoderma, Phytophthora. I mean, if it's crispy, it's not dry, or it's not wet enough. If it's wilted and it's, you know, soft, it's overwatered. So, I mean, we don't have any kind of computerized system, you know, to monitor that, but we do not overwater. Overwatering is actually worse than underwatering in the long run.
So on a timer system, how do you?
I've got multiple sprinkler controls. So we have 3 irrigation controllers on different parts of the house. I think as it was modified over time, they probably added. We do have a rain sensor, so if it rains, it doesn't run. You know, and they're the basic components. Now, with the well system, I will put in a flow control sensor, you know, which if it senses constant running water, it'll cut it off. So that's a newer thing. I know a lot of commercial buildings are going to it. I'm not a big fan because it shuts down the entire system. And, you know, you plant flowers, plant new trees, I mean, a matter of days, they're gone. So I'm not a huge fan of that. I understand the principle, but on the, you know, the commercial maintenance side of it, it can be detrimental too. So,
how large is this property?
13 acres.
What percentage are you actually irrigating?
I think right now, sir, it's right around the house. It's probably about 6 acres. So the house sits back off the road, as you see. And, you know, we have trees on the cotton plant side, we have trees behind the home. There's trees everywhere, basically.
So wasn't the picture, could you describe what you're trying to irrigate, what you're irrigating?
I mean, it would be the back half of the property, basically. So at the very back, there's like a natural area, like a buffer to the homes behind. So probably the first 75 feet.
Is that the area she's pointing with the cursor, what she's saying? That's what you're trying to.
So the first 75, you know, 100 feet right there, we wouldn't be irrigating that, but forward of that, on the east side over there, and then to the, you know, going out to the front of the home also. So to generalize it, I would say that currently the back half of the property. you can see at the front of the home, there's a gray square to the right,
Yeah,
so up a little bit more.
probably about right there.
Yeah, and then over the other side too, so,
Okay.
you know, you're probably looking at 6-7 acres, somewhere in that region.
And that's what you're already irrigating right now.
Yeah, that's what we're doing currently.
I mean, just from a treatment standpoint, I mean, fire supply and all that, is it better, would it be better to use irrigation versus treated water? Just from a water supply side, is it a better idea to use water, from a well to water some plants and then have more water available in the,
Just saves us some money on chemical additions and stuff and, you know, so. But- So
You're just gonna, this well's just gonna be used to feed the existing
Yeah,
system.
for right now, for sure, just, you know, definitely.
one acre is 45,000 square.
There you go. Almost 6, what do you say?
Yes. Good guess.
So your main appeal is based on, I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the appeal based on?
That's a good question. Do we
Well,
have?
may I speak? I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the appeal is on, you know, being on the farm, so many fruit trees, you know, stuff for, I read the statute and it says, you know, there's a human use clause in there. And, you know, pretty much the majority of what we're doing falls under human use for our own consumption. So it's not for sale. I mean, this is stuff that we use at our home. We do have a herb garden, you know, it was pretty much a farm-to-table residence. And actually, I think the lady who owned it may have been related to the Smiths that owned the horse farm. So, that just got deeded to UT Martin. She donated 300 acres, which is fantastic in our industry because Memphis has no land-grant college, so you cannot get a horticultural school in Memphis. So that's actually on my list of things to do, is at some point push for, because now we have a land-grant college in Memphis, a campus or a property that's actually, you know, could be used for agriculture, horticulture.
So I think what Quentin was pointing out, that the appeal should be based on, and what language was it that you were referring to, that, because the Shelby County Health Department has a responsibility by the law, the rules, to deny first, and then you appeal. So you're saying that there's a section in here, and I don't know if the board, if y'all are familiar with it, what section is he referring to in human use? We understand that there are uses for well water that better benefit, things benefit better from well water. Certain things. In this case, one of the other cases we had is a well, is a pond, a certain pond over an acre. We don't have that in this case. So far, you stated that there is a financial incentive. The board is also interested in, you know, making sure that the water is used as efficiently as possible. You've explained that it's not beneficial to overwater.
Absolutely, it's actually very detrimental.
We're also looking for the usage, or we understand you're irrigating with it, but is that the primary reason that you need to get this well? I mean, the plants, do they do better with would they do just as fine with MLGW water versus a well water?
Well, water would actually be better for the plants because without the chlorine. So I believe chlorine causes sodic soils, what's called sodic soils.
What kind of?
Sodic. So the sodic soil has a high content of salt, and the term for it is sodic. So I think it comes from sodium. So
It's not beneficial to using MLGW water source.
it's not beneficial to the plants, and not beneficial to me for the cost of it, to be honest. But no, there's no, I mean, there's no documented study that shows that, chlorine is beneficial to plants. I'm not aware of any of that.
Mr. Chairman, just to focus the board's attention, is the three criteria where the board may allow a well in this situation. The second one is just for irrigation, provided such parcel is not less than 4 acres, it just says irrigation. And then, of course, the first one's filling the lake, and the third one's livestock. So some of those things that might need some more clarity later. That's all it says, irrigation. And irrigation.
Do we have any more questions from the board or any more inquiry, any further clarifications? So there is within the constraints of the rules, there is a allowance for irrigation. Is that correct? Okay. Do we have a motion to, and considering this case, do we have a motion for or against this appeal? We have a move for approval by Terry Perkins. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Okay, we'll put that to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Your request is approved. Again, I understand that it's not in your benefit to overwater, but we would encourage you to take it sounds like you have a rain meter.
Do have a
Rain gauge,
sensor.
which is tied into the system, would be a best management, probably what we consider a best management practice for limiting the usage when not necessary. So please keep that functional so that your system.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank
So
you.
what is next in the process? We just apply?
Staff will get with you if applying.
Okay.
Get with Ms. Tyson then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
I
sir.
appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming in. Have a good day.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Wait, I got a question. So what are the units of measure? I was trying to, because I was looking at this.
Hundreds of cubic feet.
So that's 161 cubic feet.
161 times 100 cubic feet.
Times 100.
CCF.
Centium of cubic feet.
Can't you just do gallons?
Why can't they just do gallons? That's a great question.
Well, yeah.
Been on the books. Wouldn't be as vague.
We've asked before.
Wouldn't be as vague.
The elusive CCF, what does it mean?
Doing all those calculations for the property that we visited this morning in Millington regarding their water
We put it in metric for you.
set out
How about that?
recalculating everything out the gallons.
This is my third grade sense of logic.
Yeah, multiply by 748, that'll give you the number of gallons.
I'll Google it.
748.
No, I just was, because when you said.
I have a whole tutorial prepared now on how to convert MLGW's numbers to gallons.
We can go back way back in action with everything.
Cubits or surveying with
100
change.
years
It's not the first time it's come up.
First time I learned that one change, what's the change?
We kinda got meters already, so I don't know if we really want to spend that money again.
Uh-oh.
What you think about
It
that?
sounds like
That's
it's
just a
meters.
quick calculation y'all could do for the bill.
You know, that's gonna be hard for us to pull together, because depending on what they're using the water for is gonna depend on how much water they need. And then we also need some experts in the latest instrumentation that's out there. You know, obviously, you know, none of the other guys mentioned about the water. You know, I see that all the time. You're driving down the street and it's pouring down rain and there's sprinklers going. It makes perfect sense to have a meter or have a sensor that cuts it off.
Soil moisture.
Obviously, they've got one, he's got one on his system, but you know, how are we gonna know if that's available or not? You know, what's available? Are moisture meters available to say how much moisture is in the ground? I know there is.
Like Briarcrest doesn't have that, because he's,
Right.
I know he's doing a good job, he said that'd be perfect for them.
Yeah, but he might not want it because he wants to visually see it. And and you know, what he's using his grass for would be different than what I'd use my grass for.
And it's a full-time staff person monitoring that versus other places.
That's the meter.
Yeah.
Right, in a way, but yeah, it's just, that's why we need to sit around and jaw about this for about a half a day in the future, though, where we'll have a little, I'll have food, I'm gonna have food, we're gonna have breakfast, we sit and do this right, but sit around and have a workshop where we put together kind of a toolkit of conservation means and measures that we can kind of, the board can look at.
We can get some calculations for ponds pretty quickly, like we just need to sit down and do a workshop.
Evaporation rate, yes.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, there's 3 criteria. If they meet it, how do you deny it?
It's so broad, right? So it means that it just means a mill for getting your well. So if we had a little set of agreed upon measures where, okay, we want you to log your stuff in, where that'd be a database for us to start building. Yada yada, the type of meters, it's kind of work through all that, where we have a pick out of that and go, your well is approved with these following conditions, and it's the same array. I mean, it may not be the same conditions for everybody we do, but it'd be the same set of them for everybody. Because I could see the way you're thinking, this conservation plan's the way to go.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking about a lot of, EPA has a lot of regulations for different things. One of them is, when you're discharging to a river or creek, a lot of times they say something like BPMs or BAT, best available technology or
Best management practices.
right. So they don't paint themselves into a box saying you need to use this type of rain gauge, or you need to use this type of hygrometer, or you need to best management practices, and then maybe you have a kind of a general list or pot. This is kind of what we have, and anything, and then you throw in and anything else new that gets. Any other technology.
Yeah, it's just clean air has got the same thing, racked, back, cracked, actually not meters, make you dizzy.
So how far are we taking this?
Yeah, well, that's the question.
Let's put it out there. You have to be very careful what you do, because it has ramifications.
Sure. And that's why a good half-day little retreat, we're making fun, we sit around and talk this stuff out, and figure out what we want to do, because, I mean, in my mind, hell's coming from across the river from the rest of this country. They're gonna look for us. And we're little Shelby County, at least we got us, but these people can go drill pipelines set up in Haywood County, and off we go.
If they can just go right to the next county's over, then whatever it comes.
But you're saying for the big industry, you're saying going to the next county for the big industries.
It could be the small ones.
I mean, how we want to.
Are you talking about overdrawing of the broader aquifer?
It's just kind of all the whole discussion together. I mean, a big consideration, people got to work. We've got to figure out how to make that balance. We do not want to, I think Weston's a good example of that.
Yes.
I mean, it's a real good, matter of fact, we need to meet with them, look at their conservation plan, kind of what they're doing. And they've made a commitment to get away from that chiller, which is I think it's about a $5 million, $8 million deal to do that.
That was a one-pass chill kind of chiller?
Yeah, been that way since World War II.
Maybe having Fleischman come in and talk about their latest cooling tower installation and the water conservation practices they're doing. and see what the industrial standard could be for some of that water recycling technology.
Yeah, and nobody asked them to do that, they just said, hey, let's go do it, so.
Simple as moving from California to Texas.
Larry, I've got to say this, but we went to a public meeting for the new owners of the DuPont plant.
Mitsubishi, yeah.
No, the one in Blight Road.
DuPont,
Yeah,
Kimura, Streslovka.
Yeah, the
It's got
15 million
5
gallon a day
that's the way to go.
water user since the 50s. And during the discussion, we learned that they're single pass cooling water.
No, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
That's just what you think.
and the more I've looked into it, the more I think the majority of the big industrial users are single pass, even though it's in the regs.
It's been their grandfather, so there's no way to back them up.
Yeah, but that's going on, just FYI.
Every 5 years or so, the city issues permits for a lot of our large industries. Now, they're working more at the discharge side for, you know, the dirty water, but there could possibly be another way to help address some of
At
this.
least we'll look at it. And some of that stuff is just cooling water, it won't be discharged into the POTW. But yeah, and outside Shelby County, I just learned the state doesn't, they barely keep up with it, but you can just have a continuous discharge well anywhere you want, anytime you want, all the time you want. I got the list from their fellow for Hardeman County. There must be 3,000 wells up there. I know. And they go, well, we don't, you know, I said, this is because of a neighbor where I hunt, the guy next to him was flooding his land. This is about 30, 40 acres. And the state said, well, that's a tort problem. They just flood your land. We don't care about how much you pump. And then this thing ran for a year and a half. I mean, 24/7. And it wasn't big, but it's just amazing how much water just comes out of a little 2-inch line 24/7. I'm like, dude, and the guy, anyway, that's a long story. But anyway, all right, this is a good meeting, guys. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, that's good.
Y'all gotta do the motion to go. We can't send you home.
Good job.
We can't send you home. You gotta send yourself home.
Second that, like, am I allowed to say?
Good meeting. Good meeting. Everybody's kind of got this feel. It's like, what do we do? We do something or what?
Do we have, I mean, and I know we've officially, but as far as filling out, do we have there looks like there's a city of Memphis at large?
Yeah.
Has that been addressed to the city government, or is that something I need to kind of work?
It would help if you did it internally. I'll go back and look at my last email to whoever hoo-ha over there that is ignoring me. But
They're ignoring Larry?
No, I made a big deal about it. I'm coming for you, because board positions are notoriously, this board's lucky because it's got these designated positions. Like our air board, it's a nightmare getting folks to serve on it, and because it's all, the staff has to go recruit them. Where this was kind of got set up where you got municipal reps, which is a huge plus because it's kind of part of the job. And David, thank you, Lord, for you being here, because without your expertise, but I mean.
Longest serving member?
Yeah, we do.
Pretty much, yeah. I think you are. I think on the air board, we got something like Norval, Harville, George Harville. He's been on that thing almost 40 years, 38 years. He's a good guy, but he's like a big guy. All right, guys.
Okay.
All right.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Ayes have it.